I was with John Sopel last night, star, of course, of the Newsagents, an author of a rather splendid new book, Strangeland, about which you can hear more on Full Disclosure next week, I think. No, this week, possibly. And it was while reading his book in preparation for interviewing him on stage in Richmond last night that I came across a phrase I think you're going to hear quite a lot on this programme. He described the Labour victory in the last election as a loveless landslide. And that's such a great little distillation of much bigger issues, isn't it? A loveless landslide. And the lovelessness is probably best illustrated or best proved by the speed with which Keir Starmer's approval ratings have plummeted. He won an election almost on sufferance, a vote to get rid of the Tories after plumbing all manner of democratic depths, rather than a vote that was enthusiastically inviting Labour into Downing Street. That's not new. I don't think you could describe Tony Blair's victory in 1997 as a loveless landslide, but certainly in the run-up to it, you had an awful lot of analysis explaining that this was just a consequence of Tory fatigue. John Major had run out of road. The Conservatives had been in power since 1979 and the country was ready for a change. So all of that would apply. But loveless landslide seems to me to be a sobriquet particularly applicable to Keir Starmer's situation. So if I were trying to make a list of objectively agreeable, as in things to which we can agree, as opposed to agreeable as a synonym for pleasant, objectively agreeable statements, that Keir Starmer's victory was a loveless landslide. The existence of people who love him doesn't prove I beg your pardon, doesn't disprove the accuracy of that statement. So things we can say with a degree of confidence that most people are going to agree with, whether it describes them or not. It's going to be a sort of majority description. Keir Starmer's victory was a loveless landslide. What else can you say with a degree of certainty? Well, in the case of print media, you can say that for whatever reason, they are so spooked and terrified by a Labour government that they will turn an acorn into a mighty oak of alleged scandal, whether it's because they're terrified of what might be unearthed by the investigation into COVID contracts that Rachel Reeves has announced, whether it's because they're terrified of Labour's determination to clamp down on non-dom taxpayers, which would play directly into the personal life of the owner of the Daily Mail, whether it is just a sort of general commercial belief that by terrifying people about the unspecified threat of leftists and leftism, you will hang on to a few more readers as the entire medium of print newspapers withers on the national vine. I don't know, but I think we can all agree about that generally speaking, the conversation set by the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, and for those people who still read it, the Daily Express, is very much of a piece, the lens, and the Times as well. The Times has dived in on some of the stuff that we're going to discuss today as well. And you can say that with some confidence, that the lenses are distorted. A lot of the journalism is bent. It's the same sort of journalism and journalists that were comfortable with the corrosive impacts of Brexit, comfortable with the moral depravity of Boris Johnson, not just comfortable with, but positively adoring of Liz Truss's fiscal event or mini budget or whatever you prefer to call it. I can't bring myself to remind you of the front pages and the comment pieces with which Liz Truss's aberration was greeted. But suffice to say that they read more like birthday messages than they did like political journalism. Finally, a true Tory budget, I think, was on the front of the Daily Mail. The best budget of my life, wrote some chancellor in the Telegraph. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, they just all pretended that it had never happened. So you can say that with a degree of confidence as well. And then you've got what would you call it? The seepage. That's not a very nice word, is it? It makes you think perhaps of the health warnings on the back of American crisp packets. But you then have the seepage from the bent media, because the rest of us, in a sense, look at the world through the lenses that they have distorted. I have little choice when I come to work in the morning than to get an idea of the lie of the land from the most popular newspapers in the land. And that will be a view that is conducted through the distorting lens. There isn't really a left or a centrist media to speak of. You might cite The Guardian, but I mean, it's a turgid business at the best of times, apart from Adrian Charles's column and Marina Hyde and Nesreen Malik and some of the commentators. It certainly doesn't do for the Labour Party the job that the Telegraph or the Mail or the rest of them do for the Tory Party. And then you've got the other consequence of seepage, which is thinking, well, maybe this matters more than I think it does. And that's where I am at the moment. I caught myself this weekend thinking, well, maybe this matters more than I think it does. The sheer weight of the Fourth Estate cannot be wrong. Perhaps it is massively important who paid for Bridget Phillipson's birthday party. I get an idea of how bent the print media can be. The Sun carries a column today accusing Lewis Goodall of having interviewed Bridget Phillipson about her birthday party without mentioning that he had been at her birthday party. Anyone who listened to Lewis's show on Sunday will know it was the first thing he mentioned at the very top of the interview. But if you're writing a column for Rupert Murdoch, these little details don't matter. These facts don't matter. It's all about the feelings, trying to portray one of the rare voices of balance in the British media as somehow being bent by lying in a column in a newspaper. It's plus ça change. So then you have this problem here that I suffer from is thinking, well, it must matter more than I think it does. It must matter more than it seems to. And to play into that position, you would, I think, point at the winter fuel payments, wouldn't you? You'd say, well, how can they possibly have been taking largesse from Wahid Ali while also cutting winter fuel payments? But if you think about even that for more than 90 seconds, you realise it's a false dichotomy. The figure attached to Keir Starmer's hospitality and clothing donations covers a 5-year period during which they weren't necessarily planning to cut winter fuel payments. That was a decision made having become party to the Office of Budget Responsibilities projections after winning the general election. So I did fall for that a bit. But then I thought to myself, well, if there's an old lady in Preston who's struggling to pay her gas bill, what possible role does the price of the spectacles that Keir Starmer has worn today have on her ability to pay her gas bill? So you can talk about the smell test, or you can talk about the optics. I hate that word, optics, by the way. It's become a sort of byword for woolly analysis. But in terms of what matters and what is substantive, it doesn't matter at all. Did it? It doesn't matter at all. How does your ability to pay your gas bill, how is it in any way affected by the price of the suit that Keir Starmer is wearing? Wahid Ali is a Labour peer giving money to his own party, giving money to members of his own party, people, I don't know, perhaps he even describes as friends. So what is it that I am supposed to be cross about? And then the other voice kicks in and goes, no, you must be missing something. And you begin to, well, am I being tribal? Am I being all the things that I accuse other people of being? And you can answer that question quite easily. Have they broken any rules? No. Have they broken any laws? No. Have they unlawfully prorogued Parliament? No. Have they lied to the House of Commons and been found to have done so by a committee of their own peers, with a majority of members belonging to their own party? No. Have they accepted donations and lied about it, as Boris Johnson did, arguably, with regard to his home decor? No. What transgressions are we describing here? And it would be foolish not to see them in the context of what went before. Because the people who are telling us to get angry, the people who are claiming to be angry, the people to whom I turn when I find myself thinking, does this actually matter more? They're precisely the same people who never mention the fact that Boris Johnson was bankrolled by the bloke who owns JCB, even as the bloke who owns JCB faces investigations into whether or not he owes £500 million in unpaid tax. Johnson took more money from Lord Bamford for his wedding to his current wife. In one transaction, he took more money. If you divide the 5 years over which Keir Starmer is supposed to have been accepting the generosity of donors, if you divide it by 5, Johnson took more money in one deal with Lord Bamford to pay for his wedding, up to and including the glorified burger vans, The sum total of the Downing Street decoration was in excess, and that's one transaction with Lord Brownlow. The sum total of that transaction was more than the absolute total of 5 years' worth of donations received by Keir Starmer. So what am I supposed to be angry about? But then you must be missing something. You're suffering from your own footballification description. And you worry about that because the biggest difference between people in the centre or people on the extremes is that we actually like to judge ourselves by the standards we apply to other people. You look at a Johnson or a Trump or a Farage, they're constantly expecting to be let off while attacking other people for behaviour that they would never even question their own right to do themselves. So that's a great curse of the liberal, if you like, is applying this compass of self-regulation. Am I doing it? To which you return to the central question. You return to the central question of what have they done wrong? You see? What have they done wrong? What laws have been broken? What lies have been told? What standards have been breached? What regulations have been ridden roughshod over? And what transgressions have been committed? And I mean, it was yesterday evening, actually, I found myself thinking about this. And I suddenly thought, nothing at all. So some good journalists don't know what to do. Some good journalists are, trying to learn a new language, a language of honest, imperfect, flawed government. Having spent certainly the period between 2019 and 2022, having spent that period reporting upon profoundly dishonest, deliberately dissembling and deceitful government. And then the aberration of Liz Truss and the sadness of Rishi Sunak, you find yourself thinking, what do we do? What do we report on? There's this vacuum now. And into that vacuum have moved Angela Rayner's photographer, Keir Starmer's suits and football match attendance, and Bridget Phillipson's birthday party. In the great scheme of public malfeasance in recent years, these things barely merit a whisper. If you're being honest, if you're being objective, how can you possibly care more about Keir Starmer's spectacles than you do about Boris Johnson acting upon the instructions of his old mates at the Daily Telegraph, trying to get Owen Paterson off the hook for egregious breaches of parliamentary standards, 2 resignations of his own independent advisers on the ministerial code? It's actually extraordinary. And of course, the first thing that you have to do is recognise either the dishonesty or the disingenuousness of people claiming that pointing this out is akin to excusing Johnson's moral depravity or Liz Truss's epic incompetence or Theresa May's weakness. It might be a bit like that, actually. I guess it might be a little bit like excusing Theresa May's weakness. But the challenge now, and it's one that I really, really don't... I know, you're telling me stuff I already know. Everything that we're supposed to be getting angry about now has been declared. Johnson claimed he'd lost the phone and couldn't remember who'd paid for his flat to be redecorated to the tune of £112,500. I mean, who here, honestly, would remember the identity of the person that had thrown you a 6-figure sum to tart up your flat? Of course you're going to forget it in a heartbeat. So there are 2 questions here. And Beatrice tells me Angela Rayner has not got a photographer. The department she is a head of has a ministry communications photographer, somebody be working essentially for the communications department. So what am I supposed to be angry about, except the fact that I expect Labour to be held to a higher standard than everybody else? I just do, because I'm naive and idealistic. And they are held to a higher standard than everybody else, because if they broke the law or breached the rules or rode roughshod over the regulations or spat all over the standards or lost their own ethics advisors in disgust at their own conduct, then you would come down on them even harder than you did on the lot before. So what am I supposed to be angry about or even concerned about at the moment? That's my first question for this week, 0345 6060 973. And remember, as soon as you tell me what I'm supposed to be angry about, I'll ask you to compare it to what went before, and on a scale of 1 to 10, if you like, tell me how loudly these supposed transgressions register. And then the second question I've got for you is, what are we going to do? I nearly said guys then. Slightly plaintive tone to my voice. What are we going to do, guys? You know, it was easy, our time together, when most of the media was lying to us about the people in power, and we knew it. And they were lying from a position of defence. I could just come on the radio every morning and point it out. You could ring me up and tell me what the situation was like if you were trying to help with the COVID response, but you didn't have any friends in the cabinet. You didn't have Michael Gove on speed dial. You didn't have a long history of donating to the Tory party. You didn't have access to the VIP lane. We could do it easily. But what do we do now? What do we do now? What I mean, you can talk to me about the public mood. Here's one. Yeah, Robert says, you have not read the public mood. Well, what the heck is the public mood, Robert? You can't answer the question of what they've done wrong. Oh, you haven't read the public mood, says Robert, who doesn't go into Idiot's Corner for that. Because what I've done, and it's probably my fault that you haven't noticed, what I've done is describe what has been done to provoke the public mood. The pretense, the epic lie, the obvious dishonesty that the people who haven't broken the rules, the people who haven't broken the law, the people who haven't trashed parliamentary standards, the people who haven't hemorrhaged their own ethics advisors, the people that haven't kept donations secret or left largesse undeclared, these people are somehow as bad or as deserving of my opprobrium as the people that did all of those things, Robert? So it's not even about comparisons with the last lot, and I can understand why you might desperately want to cling to the carcass of that idea. It's about, and here's the point, it's about the importance of a rules-based system. That's what's been broken over the last 8 years. The importance of a rules-based system, whether it's Trump or Johnson or any of their acolytes, the idea that the rules shouldn't apply to us, the idea that the rules don't matter, the idea that the rules are only for the little people. Something that was spotted about Johnson by his classics master at Eton College in that famous letter that I won't read to you again because you've heard it so many times before. The network of obligations that bind us all. The idea that these people are not bound by the network of obligations that bind us all. So forget about the identity of the people that came before. If your concern is, and as it should be, for the rules-based order, for the network of obligations that bind us all, for the standards, for the regulations, for the rules, these Labour politicians have done nothing wrong. Nothing at all wrong. And yet the people who sat idly by while the rules-based order was trashed, the people who in many ways indulged in cheerleading and tummy tickling while regulations were broken, standards were breached, laws were snapped. They are telling me to get cross about the people who've broken no rules. And I don't know how we do it journalistically. So I need your help. What am I supposed to be cross about? 0345 6060 973. And how do we plot a course through this absolute salad of rollocks that is being served up to us by the people who were either implicit in or silent while various iterations of the Tory party took this country to the abattoir?